welcome to the Vigilate Dialogue. I am your host, Shaina Smith, welcoming you to the National Boardroom. With me this evening, I hope to have a very stimulating conversation. I have two guests, two of my good friends. With us, we have Mr. Claude Skelton and Mr. Elton Callwood.
Yes.
Colleagues, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Welcome to the boardroom.
Yes.
Looking forward to a good conversation tonight.
I'm sure we will.
Y'all ready?
Yes.
Be ready?
All right. So tonight, we talking about good governance. And I guess to put it in context about the social economic development of our country and some of the things. We have a lot going on. I was reading the newspaper today, getting caught up with all that's been happening for the past week, and there's quite a bit of things. But I find that one of the things that our public needs to be more informed about is in terms of good governance. We have a lot of catchphrases like transparency and freedom of information. But in terms of the good governance of the country, I think it's something we need to become more knowledgeable about, and hope to bring across some good information tonight about, you know, the issues that we are facing and how we need to go about getting them resolved. Okay? So in terms of good governance, just to set the backdrop to it, some of the characteristics of good governance is that it's accountable. So we hear that conversation a lot. Transparent, follows the rule of law. It's responsive, equitable and inclusive, effective and efficient, participatory, meaning that, again, the populace is involved in the governance of the country. So understanding that definition, what is your understanding in terms of our situation here? Let's start off with you, Claude, as far as where we are in the BVI.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm pleased I've had an opportunity to come and sit with you and dialogue, because I think this is part of the journey that we must embark on as a territory, as a people. And as it relates to governance, you know, if you think about it, in 13 years, it will be 2030. Mm-hmm. And so for me, good governance requires good leadership. And good leadership is reflected by having a clear vision for where or what you would like to see happen. Mm-hmm. And you will know that one of the best definitions, working definitions I've heard by some of the gurus, is that a vision is a picture of your preferred future. Mm-hmm. I mean, our backdrop here it's a picture. Mm-hmm. And you have to use words to paint a picture, cast that vision to your people, have the people to buy into and or to add and or to edit so that they see themselves in the picture. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I have not heard a clear, strategic, thoughtful, inclusive vision for the BVI, short of having a clear vision. Mm-hmm. Where you can have certain benchmarks, a certain timeline over a period of time. Short of that, what we are ending up with is a kind of an ad hoc, hodgepodge way of going about and doing things. Mm-hmm. So I think at the very genesis, at the very beginning, we need leadership that is able to paint pictures with words that cast a vision for the territory. Here is where we're going to be by 2030. Mm-hmm. Here is why we need to be there. Here's how we're going to get there. Here is your role in participating, that participatory component, as to that will help us to navigate our way towards it. Here are the sacrifices that it will take. Here are the opportunities that will be along the way, and here is the fruit in the end of this journey. And I think if you don't have that, then you are forever reliant on someone else's vision, someone else's idea for who you are, identifying you, and where you're going to end up. So it's very important for me. First, good governance, as you said, is this just a buzzword? Is this just, we play around with this stuff? Mm-hmm. How was that concretized in the lives of our people? One, there are two things for me: the development of the country and the welfare of the people. Mm-hmm. And those two things must work in tandem. We can't talk about building a great little nation mm-hmm. and developing our country, and then the people, the welfare of the people are left behind. Economically, socially, I mean, they continue to lag. While you're building a country, For who? You know, that will become the question. So I will pause there to defer to my guest, but at the very onset, what's the vision?
Yeah, that's the first thing.
That's the first thing.
So, LT, for you, also the same question, but I'll also add to that, when we hear political parties talking about legislative agendas on a manifesto, should that be considered the vision, or are we talking about something more substantial?
This is where kind of different to Claude just a little bit. A clear vision has never been put in place by any political party, past or present. What they have done, though, is give us ideas of what they intend to do. They have been catchphrases like pie in the sky dreams, things that we hang our hat to a point where we can't reach it. Where is the airport at, $375 million? Where is the Pier Park at ridiculous amounts of money? Where everything being overpriced. So you hear a plan, but most of the time it's a pie in the sky dream. In between that now, that's where the lack of good governance comes in. And then we have to start defining it and coming from a point where people can first understand, okay, we talk about good governance, but what really is bad governance?
Okay. Which is good because we need to contrast it. That's
you understand? So when you look at what is bad, is enforcement of unjust laws and legal systems. It's the abuse of executive power. Sometimes leaders get the God syndrome that because I've been in this position for 20 or 4 elections, I am invincible. So I can do it and get away with it. Because I have done all these little favors for you during the election and now I'm here, I own you. That in itself negates the possibility of even being a good governor in leadership. Then it comes down to some of the things that the governor spoke about in his State of the Territory address when he talked about freedom of information legislation.
Okay.
I always like to catch phrase, and I always say from time, whenever I talk about politics, is common sense legislations. Legislations that speak to specifically what Claude is talking about, bringing us back to a place where, though we develop, we are still in the mix, a part of it. You don't go ahead of us. You bring along the people. The governor in his last speech in March mentioned that when he, somewhat in my point, insulted our government, talking about they're developing for more expatriate than they had for their own local, whether they're developing the court, the commercial court, and leaving the magistrate court behind, or whether or not they're fixing the roof at the prison, because these don't seem to create the picture for the international market that we want. So here we are developing for a show, when in fact really poverty is on the rise. And so good governance also comes down to prioritization of how you spend the people's purse. And we've seen abuse tremendously in this particular area. So we go to church and we hear about stewardship. To be a good leader, you have to be a good steward, specifically of our treasury. And we have seen the abuse there. So when you talk about bad governance, you talk about abuse of also the country's purse for your own, sometimes, in my opinion, as is your own wallet.
Yeah. So when we look at, okay, we're saying, again, socio-economic development, that's my thing now. It's like, we can't talk about economic development without talking about the social.
Yes.
What do you see, and this is for both of you, as far as those top 3 issues, I think, socio-economic issues that we need to look at? Because we already established we seem to have a lack of vision. So even though we may have legislative agendas, and manifestos that are put forward, we don't seem to be adhering to them because, they make good for paper, but in terms of the manifestation of it, when we go back and we look at it in 4 years' time, have we been tracking on that or not? And, oftentimes we see not, because then the stuff shows up again in the next manifesto.
Yes.
So we have some fundamental issues, I think, in terms of, the understanding the need for a plan, because somehow we don't seem to think we need a plan. What do you guys think is happening there?
I like the word plan. If you don't plan, you plan to fail. And we need a plan. Now I can take this conversation to another level and talking about a plan for self-sustainability versus independence. But if you're going to, whatever the plan
You mean in terms of economic sustainability?
In terms of economics.
Okay.
Where do we want to see the country, like Claude said, 13 years from now, which is a strategic plan. But then there is, there's short-term tactical plan that is necessary. How do we bring money now to this territory? To to mend the breaches in terms of cutting budgets in some of the key areas, whether it's in the police department, whether it's in immigration, whatever it is, each department budget has been cut year after year, whether it's water and sewage, and you can't get a water meter anymore, and all these different things, and people catching the blunt of it when it's really not their fault.
Yeah.
You know? So you need a plan, you need a tactical plan, you need a plan that can bring some monies now.
Okay.
You understand? Is it sitting down and being bold enough and say, you know what, let us write our own constitution as it relates to our financial services management. This way, let them blacklist us how they want on the international market, but this is what our niche is. And we sell it and market it to those who are willing to work with our rules and not necessarily go by the rules that governs us by everybody else. Maybe that might bring a new market into financial services, and then it starts to grow, because here we have so many empty spaces and buildings of people who had a vision to build a building with a hope that companies want to rent these spaces. But then there's this consistent reduction, you know, in the financial services industry, and these companies that would rent are now no longer here. And then you got inflation, where the government now can afford to pay $27 to $30 a square foot. So me and you, Shaina, are trying to get a little space to open a sunglass shop. We can't do it because we can't afford it. You know?
I want to read something in your hearing to your question. It says, acknowledge that the Society of the Virgin Islands is based upon certain moral, spiritual, and democratic values, including a belief in God, the dignity of human person, the freedom of all individual, and respect for fundamental rights and freedom, and the rule of law. Mindful that the people of the Virgin Islands have expressed a desire for their constitution to reflect who they are as a people and a country, and their quest for social justice, economic empowerment, and political advancement. And this is the paragraph I want us to get. Recognizing that the people of the Virgin Islands have a free and independent spirit, and have developed themselves and their country based on the qualities of honesty, integrity, mutual respect, self-reliance, and the ownership of land, engendering a strong sense of belonging to and kinship with these islands. That's 3 of the paragraphs in the preamble to the revision of our 2007 Constitution, prior to which we had one dated back for 30 years, 1976 to 2007, when it was changed. It's in there. Insofar as the Socio-Economic Development Plan, listen, a part of that vision has to be what our foreparents have handed to us was a rich history and heritage. We owned the greatest resource of all, short of ourselves, land. And what we see taking place down through the years is a selling off, selling out of that land. If you don't own the land, you can't speak about nation building. People without land can't build nation. So there has to be a stoppage of land being going away from indigenous Beaverlanders one way or another. One of the things I've never agreed with, and Honorable under H. Lavity Stout and some of the great works that he's done, one of the shortcomings there was the selling of these outer islands. We didn't lease them, we sold them, which means chances are we can't never get them back. I am not in favor of selling land just outright, because I think there should be restrictions. And this may sound funny in the ears of some, but when you lose ownership of your land, you lose ownership of everything else. And then you dovetail that into the fact that the cost of living, the whole economic situation is out of kilter. Now people, the banks are taking people's homes, their mortgaged land, their mortgaged that, their mortgaged their lives. Their mortgage really their children's and grandchildren's future.
Yeah, that's their inheritance.
All right? That's inheritance. And so when you see that slippery slope that we've been on for quite some years now, it begs the question. We are losing the very thing that our foreparents fought for, sacrificed for, cost some of them their lives. But in the BVI in particular, as opposed to some of our regional neighbors, we were left with ownership of the land. So a part of whatever that social economic plan is has to go back to the psychology of the way we think about ourselves, who we are.
As owners.
As owners, as entrepreneurs. We have never been good at being employees. Because that's not a part of who we are.
No.
We will work, but that ain't who we are. All of that is slipping away. It's slipping away because it's becoming more and more increasingly difficult to do business in our own land. The level of frustration at trade, the level of frustration and the hoops that the banks put you through to even leverage some of the land, the nonchalant posture that governments, not just this present one, have taken on in challenging the banking industry to be more user-friendly to its citizens, it's lacking. So that social economic development component has to be a re-engineering of ownership and setting a path for our people to have a preferred option. And I underscore preferred because we must be unapologetic and unashamed when it comes to the empowerment of our people in this country. Our people has to come first. It is those people who went to the polls and elected you to sit at a table of decision, to speak on their behalf, to be a voice on their behalf, to be the champion on their behalf. That's why it sickened me that they listen to the House of Assembly when I hear ministers in the House talking about that's beyond our control. There's nothing we can do about that. This is being handed down to us. Then we need to remove you from power. If you have been put in a position to champion our cause, to look out for us, and now you're coming to us, by the way, 2 minutes to midnight to tell us, oh, that ain't us, it's beyond our control, it begs the question. But you see, that can only happen, Shaina, or it happens when there is no vision. There is no clear vision for our people. I'm not talking about the tactical stuff. That's important because it helps inform the big picture. But if you don't have no big picture, you're going to end up with hodgepodge stuff. Look at how we go about fixing the roads. Every 3 months, this is no exaggeration, and this is not casting blame on a particular individual, but it is to hold persons accountable under this whole issue of governance. How is it that every 3 months you're tearing up the road? Somebody is allowed to put down this set of wires, this set of pipe every 3 months. You mean to tell me that we don't have the wits about us, the thoughtfulness, the plan, the foresight to say we're going to do this one time, we're going to minimize the disruption of commerce, we're going to minimize the disruption of the slippery sliding monies out of our purse, and just that every 3 months we're going through this, $16 million later, we still don't have the roads that we need to be had in a small country. Imagine, we have 30,000, maybe 33,000 population. We are smaller than some of the larger universities in terms of people. They manage those every day. You mean to tell me we can't manage a simple 2x4 country in a more meaningful, substantive way?
Intentional way.
A more intentional way?
Intentional way. Because that's the key thing for me, where we have to be more intentional in terms of what we're doing. Because having worked in the public service and in the private sector, you see where the decisions that are being made in one sector or another, they are going to affect each other. But for somehow there seems to be a disconnect in terms of our understanding in the public sector. You have a role to play in the development of the country. And part of that is being a regulator as well as facilitating trade, because that's the only way you can get money. LT, for you, what you see that needs to start being done differently? Well, apart from planning, we know we definitely need some planning, but I think especially with what Claude just read, in terms of, this is in our Constitution, and I don't know how many people know that it's in our Constitution, because as soon as he started reading it, I was like, yes, that's a preamble in the Constitution, and we really have to own that as being the mantra going forward.
Again, Claude speaks more about a broader vision, and I know we need to have a 30-year plan. I'd like to speak for the tactical right now. To answer your question, they need to start listening. Our leaders need to start listening and listening to us. As the Constitution reads, it's us. But we say these things, and it's as if we hasn't said it. You campaign, you said it. I campaign, I said it. You campaign, you said it. But when the governor said it, all of a sudden it's the worst thing you ever heard. But you've been hearing it all the time. Now, if you listen and you put some of the things that we are telling you to put in place, whether it's digging up the roads, whether it's the fact that the schools have the mold, whether it's about prioritizing how you spend your money, you know, and not going after an airport that down the road may be needed, but right now, where's the priority? Listen. Just listen, because there are a lot of people in different sectors of this community who are saying the same thing, and they are feeling left out and put out and give up. And I don't want to say our next thing because these guys don't listen. So
we're feeling disenfranchised in our own country.
We are, because they're not listening. We get frustrated, and then the youth get frustrated because they don't know how to channel their anger and their frustration. You see an increase in crime for a number of different reasons. That could be one. Do we actually listen to them? Do we have leaders? We go to the facade, I'm here for the young people. When we get elected, where are they? When we make the decisions, when we make the laws, when we go in the House of Assembly and speak. We just have to start by listening. I'm going to start with just listening. I want to other things, but I'm going to seek out listening and let Claude answer the question.
You know, listen. So still on the social and economic point, certainly the social fabric of our country is of such that I think there was, at the last count, maybe 120 or 22 nationalities.
120, yeah.
120. Yes. You understand what that means? That in itself is a hodgepodge. That's a melting pot where you have that multiplicity of cultures being brought to bear in a 21 square foot space.
24.
That in itself, 24, whatever it is now.
Right?
That in itself creates a challenge, and so it's further incumbent upon BVI to celebrate. First of all, to teach on an ongoing basis, and to celebrate its own culture, unapologetically,
yes.
to wave its own flag, to sing its own songs, to do its own dance, to recall that oral and written history, and ever have it before its people. That is what needs to be instilled for our festival to be more than just Lucy and shaking your behind from one end of the street to the other. Yeah, you can do that, but it has to be more than that. So we have to be very intentional again by incorporating very specific items. And I must say one of the steps that have been made under this government is there is some advancement in that area in highlighting the culture
and the national identity.
The national identity.
Yeah.
That needs to be continue to be honed and harnessed so that we can effectively share that. So that no matter who else comes here, first we celebrate BVI. Here's where you come to make a living. Here's where you came to advance yourself. You can't just be referring to us as the locals. No, you have to become one of us.
Yes.
But we have to be proud ourselves, Shaina, and we have to celebrate that so that they are then engendered to join. That kind of a movement.
And this is the thing where, for me, when we go to college in the U.S., we have to take U.S. history or U.S. government. So it's for me, mind-boggling. It's just amusing why we don't have VI history in a primary school. Social studies is one thing, but I tell you, I'm still. The experience I had of doing VI history just for one semester, all I kept saying to myself is I've been robbed. Because it's like we went through the whole of high school, the whole of primary school, not knowing about Fleming, the story of Fleming, and when the customs took the boat, and then boy come down with the machete. And it's like, you see, this is why I keep telling people, we aren't laid back and we don't take anything just so.
That's right.
We, our forefathers, they blaze a trail basically. And it's something where, because we have been disconnected from our history, we have lost our identity because we don't know our history.
And so there needs to be an education, and there needs to be a re-education. You see, you imagine...
because even in the schools now, the 120 nationalities have to go to the school.
And this is
where you teach them about who they are.
Here, you got your children, from the time they get into stage 1 and stage 2 and start to read, they should be reading the Constitution. It should be a part of the curriculum, the Constitution, along with the other history of our Virgin Islands. I learned Virgin Islands history when I came back from school, and I started a standpoint. And each year in February, I had a Black History section. And it's through that I learned more about my Virgin Islands. Because in high school, I learned everything about
everything else.
Everybody else.
And
I can tell you how much minerals in geography in Guyana and all those places.
Yeah.
But what about?
What about us?
Here.
And a perfect example is what we do on the whole moral and spiritual end. You imagine that we all love the Bible and we love the Old Testament. But when you read the Old Testament, you are literally reading the history of faith of a particular people. And we end up growing up being grown men and women, knowing more Hebrew history, Jewish history, than we know of our own history. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
They took their history, made it sacred because that's what history ought to be. It was then canonized. They call it their scripture. Put it on your forehead, write it on your arm, wherever you go, recite it, hang it on your doorpost. That's what needs to happen socially.
Yeah.
Now the re-education part, because Shaina, all of us, we have graduated from the academic walls of somebody else's institution, not our own institution.
Our own, yeah.
We've been educated to protect and preserve and advance their agenda.
Yes.
We have not gone to school, and I tell people, I happen to have graduated with a master's as a theologian from seminary, a 3-year degree, 2 years of Greek and Hebrew. But I didn't go to seminary to learn theology, which is a way of thinking and talking about God. I went to seminary to get the tools so I can do theology. That's a whole different kind of education.
Yeah.
I am not mimicking and parroting what was told to me from somebody else. No, I need the tools. You can't go build a house if you don't have the requisite tools to then build that house. And so the re-education part, because too many of our people who have been educated and have returned to this territory still have that oppressor's mentality. And when they see me and you coming, they already place us at a disadvantage and is doing everything in their power to frustrate us from any further advancement. That comes with a part of the re-education.
Yeah.
That's on the social agenda. The churches must do better. The Ministry of Education must do better. You imagine.
As far as I'm concerned, that's the most important ministry in our government,
But I want to talk about expectancy
social
theory, though.
Yeah,
But it's expectancy theory that you experience sometime you get into, let's say, high school. You come from King Adam, then you come from Carrot Bay, you come from West End, and your father was a taxi man, my father was a fisherman, I don't know what your father was. But it is expected based on these professions and you being children of, to be in a certain place, in a certain class.
Yeah.
And if you're from this, then, so the attention is placed on these, but you find yourself in high school helping them pass their exams. When you know more than them.
Yeah.
We
have a class system here whether people want to admit it.
But you want to admit it or not. And and the gap between that is getting wider and wider. They have not, the intellectuals, the not so intellectuals, and all this is going on.
Yeah.
The poor and the rich.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I categorize them as part of the 1%ers. And people who are in the 1% category enjoy a certain comfort and convenience. And they are never prepared to upset the apple cart. They are never prepared to go to war. They're prepared to see that you and I go to war. And you and I sacrifice our bodies while they continue to enjoy the comfort and convenience in their shaded place. Because they too are economically, on the bottom line, connected to certain governments and to certain things and to certain contracts. So though they may have some wherewithal in which to bring to bear to the table as to how we advance our country, they oftentimes stand back in the political arena because they prefer to sit on their couch in their cushy place while you and I put our necks on the blocks. That's the way rich folk have always, that's the way the oligarch and the plutocrats have always operated. They send the poor and the working class off to the fight, off to the battle, while they sit in their comfort place. We have to call them to the table, talking about accountability on the inside. Hey, where's your skin in the game? What are you going to do? It just can't be sending us out.
We have to be vested too.
They have to be vested too, and they have to be called into account.
Well, we haven't taken a break, so if you just tuned in, you're tuned into the Vigilante Dialogue, and tonight we're talking about good governance and looking at, I think, the whole entire landscape right now of our territory. At some point, we're going to drill down. That might be another show, but, you know, the importance of good governance in our country and what that means. That's one of the key things that we want to make sure that we bring out tonight. And understanding the social dynamics, because I think, again, when you refer to the social classes, again, when you read the history books that we had to read, like the memoirs of H.R. Kent and J.R. O'Neill, he talked about it. He talked about the fact that we have a high expatriate population that came in looking for work, and a lot of them stayed. Yes. Some moved on and went to the next economic opportunity for them, but some became a part and integrated into the society, but never fully. So it's like you have, even within the indigenous population, you have classes where if you were from Tong, you're viewed a certain way. If you were from country, you're viewed a certain way. And if you were from Dung Island, as we used to, and which is a very derogatory term, you know, you were viewed another way, as being less than. And it's caused a lot of fracturing, I think, that we still see now, especially when you come to dual citizenship of our children.
Dung Island is not a derogatory term, just to correct you.
Which one?
Dung Island.
It's not? It is?
No? It's much better than Island Man. You understand? Because you're really from down the island, really from
Trinidad. Well, yeah, true. If you look at the map, we gone down.
So I would say Dung Island,
right?
Yeah. But I wouldn't say Island Man, because this is not a continent.
Yeah, okay.
Listen, on the matter, and there's another piece that comes into the social construct. Immigration is probably the global issue at the moment.
Yes, it is.
Everyone is concerned about identity and the sense of belongingness. Yeah. And we ought to be no different. It's a sensitive issue, but it can be meaningfully placed into policy, into a construct where persons understand, and where we set the agenda now, that listen, we are a small country, territory, that is still under some rule of the United Kingdom. Indigenous Beaver Islanders need to be placed in a position where they are protected, preserved, and prepared to move into a future that is inevitable. And while we have welcomed 120 nationalities to this territory to advance themselves, this has been the vehicle. 2030, we are at maybe 30-something% now of the population. Where are we going to be as a population numerically by 2030? And what does that mean? And what is that going to look like for us? And what are we putting in place constitutionally that protects and preserves indigenous Beaver Islanders? We must unapologetically and unashamedly have a conversation about this, then to have that be concretized in terms of policy and law that protects Beaver Islanders. We cannot shy away from this while we understand all of the sensitivities and the sensibilities around it. Persons who are born, if you're born here, you're not from here. With the exception of America, with the section of America, that's not true. There has to be immigration laws that governs some categories, what are the rights and responsibilities within those categories, so that when you come, you know what category you fall in, you know what the rights are, but they cannot allot you. We cannot. And I want to say that unapologetically, unashamedly, we cannot allot you for us, because if we do that, in the not too distant future, 10 years, 13 years, we will in fact be outnumbered in our own country. We have to say that to our regional neighbors. We have to say that to our expat brothers and sisters, that listen, just as you wish, because I can't walk into your country.
But
I can't walk into
the counter-argument though might be that even with children born here, they get the rights of their parents in their home country.
That's right.
So they are able to get rights there, but not rights where they were born. So it's like, how do we balance that?
Why do you need to balance it? If you have parentage who have resided here,
let's say the other country might be saying the same thing. It's like, you weren't born here, so why am I giving you rights?
Then the rights we give you is a residency right. And that residency right qualifies you for certain things. But it does not necessarily set you on a path to belongership, which is a whole different category. So listen, we have persons in this territory who, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not about to play one on television. We have persons in this country who have the skill set, the wherewithal. As a matter of fact, there are things that have already been written, policy around immigration, that simply needs to be picked up and dusted off and moved forward with. Bring those persons to the table. Do the commission around this territory through education and re-education, and then formulate that, crystallize it into policy that is sound, but at the end of the day, what's the goal? You always have to know what the destination is. Let's talk about vision.
Yes.
Because if you don't know that,
Where
you
you
can
going?
end up anywhere. You can't say, oh, well, I was planning to go to St. Thomas, but I end up in Chicago.
Yeah.
That is madness. If St. Thomas is your destination, then what is our best path to St. Thomas?
Effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, and so it's incumbent upon our governments, whomever they are, to ensure an immigration policy, but where that policy at the end of the rainbow protects and preserves BV Islanders, indigenous BV Islanders. You know, we have the categories of second generation, the third. Let's deal with them.
Yeah.
And let's deal with them in a humane and responsible way.
Yeah.
But
Because we have to respect human rights.
we have to protect human rights.
Yeah.
And then Shaina, in speaking about this, let's step back from the emotional component about it and speak soberly and have it reflected in policies. I think what happens is we get too emotional, and I understand it, you know, I understand it, but when it comes to creating policy and legislation,
It has to be as objective as possible.
yeah, but where, again, the goal, I keep emphasizing that, the goal is the protection
Yeah.
of BV Islanders, because that person with parentage, I'm from St. Kitts, and by right, you are here, and my right, you are born here, but where I'm from St. Kitts, you have rights in St. Kitts.
You can go back.
You can go back to St. Kitts. You can get a passport from St. Kitts.
Right.
You're not stateless. I heard that term being tossed around. That is madness. That's an over-exaggeration. It's a hyperbole of what's really taking place in the territory. And so for the social component, because that is going to impact us.
Yeah.
And then it's going to impact us economically, because there are more schools, students for schools, there are more lights to turn on, there are more toilets to flush, there are more people checking into people's hospital. You understand
And
what
the
I'm
cost
saying?
of infrastructure balloons because of that.
It balloons. And so that growth can either, growth if not properly managed, can also destroy you.
Yeah.
Would you say that the, not to take the lead on this here,
Go ahead.
would you say that the barn is open and the horses are out? Are we at that stage? Or it's still in a position where we can actually rein it in?
No, it can be reined in. We need to get the proper heads of the table, establish the categories, the rights,
In terms
and
of
privileges.
citizen,
Yes.
residents,
Yes.
you know, if you're here for, just like in the States, because if you're here for just for work purposes, you have a work visa, you're able
student
to
visa,
reside, and that's
exactly.
it.
You may have a permanent residency card, but you can't vote for the president. Even the people in Puerto Rico and St. Thomas
Can't vote for
don't
the
vote for the
president.
president. So there are categories, and
Yeah.
there are ways in which to go about this. It's not new to us. We understand the sensitivities around it.
Yes.
But to simply wax eloquent from the House of Assembly or under the tree in the well and not have our governments being accountable, talking about good governance, you're going to let it run amok. And then the horses will be out the barn. To call a commission, set a timeline in place that they must come back to you with very concrete areas in which we will address the issue of immigration in our country, so that vision becomes crystal clear of what the immigration
What is
policies
it we're
are
trying to do?
in the territory.
And like you said, LT too, this is about what is the inheritance that's going to be left for those that are coming in the next 30 years. You know, are they going to have the social and the economic empowerment that we enjoy now, or are we going to let it slip away and basically, you know, they become second-class citizens in their own?
The book of Proverbs chapter 13 says, a wise man leaves an inheritance not for his children.
Children.
Yeah.
What are we leaving in place for our?
Children.
Man, you might be off this. We're the next set of seniors. Not so much. We're the next set of, we're the next set of seniors. But that generation, we need to.
So we need
in
more
place.
generational thinking. That's what we need to put on the top of the list then.
Absolutely. As I've said,
Yes.
the visioning, I mean, we have to be clear-eyed about this. And we can't just think about the specific personalities in the post at the moment. You got to go beyond arguing about the current personalities.
Yes.
Where are we in 2020? Where are we in 2025? What does 2030 looks like? What does 2040 look like? Those of us who have children who are 10 years old now, when he or she becomes 35, what kind of country are they going to have? In that 5th or 6th paragraph in the preamble of the Constitution, it talks about the new partnership where the BVI and the UK realize that the self-determination, it uses that word, that self-determination is an integral part of the road we are on.
Yeah.
That needs to be a part of the conversation in substantive and meaningful ways.
So what you're saying, Claude, is basically what I'm saying. Common sense legislation. You know, people, the regular voter likes to vote for you based on how many concrete things. They see concrete, and they see trucks moving and projects going, and that dictates the success of a government. I remember when Nancy Penn lost, and she was speaking, she was talking about, yes, I did a lot of things, intangible things. And people don't measure you on the intangible. But that constitutional reform is intangible. Immigration reform is intangible. Labor reform is intangible. But they are the foundation of that tangible that we aim to seek for in 2030.
Especially in terms of the long-term results, because I think that's where, you know, during elections or during the campaign, you know, people get misled by the list of the projects versus it being, what are those things that are going to be not just a short term? Because if I do the right things when it comes to, let's say, banking regulations, I do the right things when it comes to employment. We didn't really touch on labor, because right now that's a concern for me, where we've been holding the same percentage of unemployment now for years. It's got to be close to a decade. And we hear people, especially our young people, talking all the time about the fact that they cannot find jobs. Not the ones that might be unemployable for different reasons, but actually finding a job that has, you know, that they're qualified for and can get gainful employment in the country.
A lot of them are basically product of a failed education system in a way. In the fact that we don't teach for critical thinking.
Yeah. In terms of equipping them with the tools.
For the tools, you know, to go out there. So, and then there are loopholes within the law where, you know, if I put an ad in the paper, but I already got the person hired, number of different loopholes. So there you're being left out. And but when you look at where most of the employment is, and you see on the marine side of things, are we teaching them about this marine industry? Is it a part of the school system? You know, so you're teaching them to be employees and not necessarily own your own business. We call it entrepreneurs now.
Not even employed in the sectors too that are where the most of the money passes in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
and you see, you know, one of the things, you take South Africa, for example. South Africa, from under apartheid and the whole movement, experienced political, at best, freedom. They did not experience economic freedom. It was political freedom. Brother and sister, when you do not have economic freedom and economic independence, you really don't have much of anything. And that's why we see a complete reversal being taking place in South Africa right now. The people are just as poor under the African National Congress as they were under
the apartheid system.
Under the apartheid system, because the economy
still owned
and
by somebody
Carver
else.
said, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy. And so when you, what does good governance look like? You set the agenda. You know what's coming on the horizon. You tap your people. Listen, here's what's about to take place in the marine industry. Here's what's about to take place in the tourism industry.
Or even the trends that you're
Here's
watching.
the trends. Ready yourself. Sophisticate yourself. Here's what training that's going to be needed. Here's the expertise that's going to be needed. When you're not having that conversation with your people, somebody else will come from somewhere else
I say it all the time.
and take advantage of the development of your country while the welfare of your people lag behind.
We don't own financial services. The tourism industry, you know where that's gone. And now you have green technology becoming the big catchphrase throughout the world. It's going to hit here more rampant in a little while. But where are we with this, and we see coming from a distance? How many of us are involved in this? But you see trade license already approved for certain people.
For certain things.
You know, to prepare themselves for this, and when that time comes, you'll say, well, I was here 5 years already, 10 years already, and based on this experience, but you had 3 contracts in 5 years.
Yeah.
How experienced are you?
Yeah.
But we have to move into these industries and start to tell you, this is where we are going.
Yeah.
I remember when I was on the scholarship committee board, and we were focusing on, because the hospital was being built, and we know we're going to need more people in the sciences. So we were given more predominance, more priority.
The scholarships
for medical
fields.
Medical fields. We break it down in terms of the importance. So business kind of take the lower income. You have a lot of accountants and financial majors and stuff like that. But when it comes to those technological jobs, those engineering jobs, I mean, we have escalators in this place, and there's not one person on the island can fix an escalator or elevator.
But it falls on it falls on leadership, my brother. It falls again on what we started by saying. Here it is. You have where we, for the first time in our history, about to have an expat, a British national, as the Auditor General. You mean to tell me, with all of the scholarships that we have issued over the years, continue to issue, our government been sitting here since Mrs. Fraser left the post. They had another year there, didn't last about a year.
This is a different one, actually.
That's the Accountant General component. That remains vacant.
Yeah.
The other lady, she retired, went on for the Auditor General post.
Yeah, that was Auditor General.
You sit here, and you mean to tell me that you have not been able to identify nobody in your country, in your territory, that is qualified for this? You mean to tell me you did not get up off of your rusty dusty and do some head hunting yourself to ensure that the key post in the territory remains in the hands of your people? And then you sit and tell us about how it's a constitutional post and it's beyond you and you don't have anything to do about it? It is irresponsible. It is reckless. It is morally obscene.
And it's
you
bad
have expended your, well, that's the point, because that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
You listen, when I was at the Beaver Post Authority and realized I'm sitting there in the existing authority, but major developments, and I don't have the requisite people, I went out and I seconded persons. I seconded someone from the AG's office. I seconded someone from Deloitte and Touche. I seconded someone from the Cabinet Secretary's office. Because that's what leaders do. That's what leadership is. It helps you to bring the persons around you in the area in which you lack to build a team, because it requires a team to do anything meaningful in a territory. That's what good governance should look like from any quarters.
Your people first.
It is unacceptable.
But like you said, LT, it's like saying we've invested in human resources. That's what scholarships are about. It's about investing in the human resources of the country to be able to take up key posts like superintendent of the prison, director of public prosecution, attorney general. You know,
let me give you an example of the
accountant general, auditor general. All of these are key posts. So it's nice for us to have the permanent secretary posts, but these are key posts.
It was 60 students per year. It will be 60 per year. So in 4 years, that's 240 students going away at an $18,000 scholarship. Some exceeded based on where they were going in England and stuff. We started pushing for music students to go to Berkeley, that kind of stuff, because they have the, intelligent quotient for it, the IQ. But we're talking about 240 in the space of 4 years. Now do that over when they first started scholarships.
10, 20 years.
So where are these people?
But you see, it goes back, we don't think very highly of ourselves. And we don't have the confidence and the competency and character of our people.
We discriminate against ourselves.
It's a crab in the barrel.
And it
he
goes
cannot
back,
go this far because he's going to think he's bigger than me.
It goes back to that social piece, Shaina, that ties into the economic component.
I agree.
And it is bad, it is poor governance, it is poor stewardship. Let me look at those 5 things you just listed. Not to mention what is happening with the financial secretary post, and I might as well take a minute to talk about that from my perspective. Here it is, you had a situation where whatever went down, you sent home, in essence, the financial secretary supposedly on vacation for 2 months. You have now just left another major door open. You say that, well, maybe some information that you received from that ministry was not correct and it's making you look bad. So you cut your nose off to spite your face. And you have just left another gaping door open for UK and all those who are responsible, who are here in names of governor, etc., and left another door open where a British national
could quite possibly walk
could
in.
quite possibly, before this year is out, walk into that position. So there you have 5 or 6 of the major
Very
posts
key posts.
in the territory being governed by persons who are not BP Islanders. There's something radically wrong with that. And so whatever else tonight, I am saying is that if you're going to have good governance, leadership matters.
Yes.
It matters who your leaders are. It matters their moral fortitude. It matters their courage
Yeah.
And that's where freedom
to
of information.
stand and to say no to some things, to be defiant on some things. But more importantly, here's another key part to good governance: transparency. You see, what our governments have not done a good job
And then we got to
of,
start wrapping up.
what they have not done a good job of is talking to their people. They
Communication.
talk to us during election to get the vote, so they treat us like a pimp-prostitute relationship. And I'm critiquing now from the inside and one who has stood on the stage. That whole thing has to be reconfigured.
Yeah.
Yes.
Transparency is the key. Now, when you're out, the truth is everybody wants everything to be transparent. When you're in, then everybody don't want things to be transparent. We have to deal with that.
Yeah.
If you simply communicate to your people, listen, people, you're the leader of the country. Here's what's going on.
Truthfully, though. Use the word truthfully.
But I'm glad you said truthfully, because I'm about to do a socio-economic political commentary show that's going to be titled Honestly Speaking. So I get a chance to plug that in. but
Go quick.
you come and you talk to your people. So listen, here's where we are. Here are the challenges. Here's what I'm asking of you. Here's what the government is going to do. Here's where we intend to be a year from now or 3 years from now. And come back to us in informal, formal settings throughout the territory where you are constantly communicating to us what's taking place, what challenges you're facing, how you intend to cure those challenges when you run into a roadblock. But this notion of sitting in cabinet and sitting in caucus and sitting in government and you don't have to tell us anything, and the opposition asks you a question and you don't have to answer the question, well, my God, how can we speak honestly about good governance, about transparency, when we have this ongoing blocking and stopping and ducking and hiding and slipping and sliding? Come on, man.
Because
we are better than this, and we deserve more than this, and it starts with leadership.
And that specific aspect is because of a legislation called Freedom of Information Legislation. It's been done, Shaina, since 2006.
You're talking about the legislation for it.
It has been done and handed over to the then government. I was on the committee headed by Jerry Ferrara. It is done and handed over.
Has it been laid?
It went to somebody's filing cabinet and stayed on it and stayed where it is.
Stayed in the folder.
Stayed in the folder. It has never come to the House for ratification for passage. Never. But 2006 it was done. I had enough fruit cocktail and fruit cups and breakfast meetings.
Meetings for that.
You know, on the government for this. And what happened?
And guys, we got to stick a pin in it right there. So I'll give you the last word, and then we're gonna start the wrap up. Go ahead.
The last word is, we need to be more transparent. We need leadership. We said in the beginning we need a plan. If you don't plan, you plan to fail. And your plan has to be tactical,
as well as strategic. Good.
We need to deal with things that we can deal with now, with a vision for the things that would be in the end result of what we do now. But there are some things that needs to be addressed now. You understand? So that's what I wrap up and say.
All right. 5 seconds.
Listen, all that we need is right here. But we need leadership that believes in its people again. We need leadership that loves its people. You can't lead people you don't love. You can control and manipulate them, but you can't lead them. And what is needed in this country, in this territory right now, above all else, is leadership. There is a deficit of leadership. We have surrendered our courage, we have surrendered our rights, and our people are suffering. And I think it's time that we all arise
Time for the masses to
and
get up.
command something different. We're better than this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're better than this.
Well, this is part 1. We will definitely have a part 2. This one went quick. And if you missed it, you can catch it right here on CBN TV channel 51 on Sundays at 3 o'clock, and we're back on Mondays at 8 p.m. as long as there's no House of Assembly. But you can also catch us online now. We have a YouTube channel, so just search for the Vigilate Dialogues and you find us right there, and you can watch us at any time. I am your host, Shaina Smith, saying let's continue the change in conversation for a better Virgin Islands.